three of the extraordinary cast members, Carrie Coon, who plays Bertha, Christine Baranski, and Morgan Spector. Welcome to the three of you. I want to start with telling you that I nearly had a panic attack thinking this show would not return for a third season. So now that we know it's coming back June 22nd, counting down the minutes, what was it like for you when you got the call saying, oh, we're coming back, and you get to like throw that corset on again?
Well, I hadn't worn one, and I was really looking forward to it.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I don't remember the moment. Do you?
It was, for us, it's always kind of mushy because it's will they or won't they negotiations all the time, and you don't know what everybody else is up to. So you wait until they tell you when to show up for a fitting.
I have to say, I was pretty convinced we were dead because during the strike, our contracts lapsed, and I was like, oh, well, they could have not had that happen, so I guess we're dead. And yeah, then we surged back, thanks to you. Yeah.
And we love each other so much.
Yeah, it's true. It's
so
true.
that's ultimately the feeling, is that our crew in New York, they've worked together for decades, and it really is like family / nerdy theater camp. It really is like that.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you think.
It's a nice place to work.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I love most, that you all talk about it being nerdy theater camp and people are singing. And I mean, describe to me like when they're turning cameras around. I mean, are you all just doing choreographed numbers? I mean, how is that?
Not me.
No, we're trying to loosen our corsets and see if we can get a few bites
Cram
to
a
eat
smoothie
in
in
between. But no, it is a repertory company of simply great New York actors, and with every season we add more wonderful theater actors, so that there is such a sense of camaraderie, because it's, oh, we did this off-Broadway show together, or remember when we did this reading, whatever. And that is a wonderful thing to have in a world that's getting so dark and weird, to have this company of loving, supportive colleagues, and as Carrie said, a wonderful crew, all across the board, just great craftsmen and craftswomen working on this show at the top of their game. It's very comforting.
And hour 16 does get deeply unserious and pretty loopy, I would say. There's a lot of laughing, the kind of thing where you get on the laughing jag and the whole crew is glowering at you because you can't talk because you're laughing. That happens as well.
Yeah, that happens.
I want to rewind to when you first took these roles in this show. And I was wondering if you could each talk a little bit about your early conversations with Julian Fellowes about your characters and what your trajectory was going to be. Carrie?
I knew, Julian was very clear, even in the document they sent that was sort of, here's the appeal to why we should do this show, about Alva Vanderbilt being the amalgam, being a sort of example for Bertha. And her trajectory through the world is really interesting and very clear. And I felt that the hallmarks of Alva's life really did dictate a little bit about where the show was going. So I felt I did have a map about where we were headed, which was a really fascinating map. And of course, when I came on board, Christine and Cynthia and Morgan were already attached. And so that was an incentive for me also to join up, because it was such a great group of people starting.
Julian had talked to me. I actually had talked to Julian Fellowes years and years before this show materialized, because I had heard from the grapevine that Julian wanted to do an American version of Downton Abbey. And we were at the Emmys one year. Of course, I lost to Maggie Smith.
If you're going to lose to anyone.
But there at the party was Julian Fellowes, and I went up to him and I said, if I would do any. I don't think I said I'd do anything if you ever. But I did talk a bit about my late husband's having a connection to the Gilded Age, his being in the Drexel family. We got into a friendly conversation, and I said, God, it would be so exciting for American actors to have a chance to work with you. And then years and years passed, and finally I got a call about doing this show. And it's, when Julian talked to me about it, it's the kind of character, he loves those ladies. He loves those tough old broads that are survivors, and they've got the wit, and they're made of vinegar, you know. It's just, he loves, and part of me thinks I'm channeling, you know, Julian channels his own personality a lot into Agnes.
I think he thinks those are the women who are really holding civilization together. And I think he's probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morgan, how about with George?
We had a conversation about, it's funny because so much of our story is the Vanderbilts, but he never mentioned that to me. With me, he was really interested in Jay Gould. He was really interested in this person who has a real sort of duality in their nature, which is in business, absolutely cutthroat, willing to destroy people, and sort of brilliant in doing that, but also at home, mainly interested in sort of tending his orchids and being a very loving father and husband. So that was sort of what he presented to me, and that seemed like an exciting thing to play.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I find myself rooting for George at times, and then I'm like, what are you doing? He is the worst. And I think a lot of it is because of their marriage and their relationship, which is super hot and so much fun to watch. And there is love and a partnership there that it's hard not to root for him, even as he's doing things that are maybe questionable.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's a total credit to the way Julian has imagined these characters. I also think, I've sort of struggled to articulate this over the last 3 years, but I think there's something about that sort of, you know, we all have a world where we're our best selves, and then we have a world where we sort of think, you know, whatever I sort of can get away with. I think if you look at your own life, you know, there's always that duality. I think there's something actually fundamentally relatable about George, even though because of the scale upon which he acts, there's a monstrousness to a lot of what he does.
But it's no mean feat to connect the East Coast with the West Coast of the continental United States.
True.
I mean, I have to say, you are a man on a mission. And these robber barons, they got a lot done. You know, they might have been, you know, they did. And then meanwhile,
So did Mussolini.
It's true, too, that the marriage is ultimately founded on respect, which sadly has become very sexy due to a lack of respect widely. And I will say it's also a testament, I think, to you, Morgan, because you exist in the world as the avatar of masculinity. Wow. And yet, right? Right? And yet you're deeply in touch with your feminine side, and you're very vulnerable, and you bring vulnerability to the robber baron, which, you know, they don't really have.
I'm putting that on a t-shirt.
I think you should, and I will wear it for Zoom Press.
Yeah, thank you.
Had Julian seen the short horror film that the two of you...
way.
Great question.
No way.
Absolutely not.
That's not. He
Has
would never
anyone
make it
seen
through
it?
that.
I'm going to send it to him, though.
Great choice. It's called Great Choice.
Yes, and it's set in Red Lobster, and it's so weird.
It's actually, no, it's a direct
yes.
recreation of a Red Lobster commercial from
Yes.
1991, except it's a man in my case, but I'm a woman in the commercial.
And at one point, you cut off Morgan's tongue with a butter knife.
That was when we met.
Spoiler alert.
We met doing
that
that
was
show, that little avant-garde short film, and spent a day or 2 days together, leaf blowers. And
2 days in a basement, basically.
And our partners had worked together on the brilliant movie Christine. So Rebecca and Tracy had done a film together, and so they'd become friendly and friends. And anyway, we had a great time. It's wild.
It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, speaking of that marriage, there's a quote, Carrie, that you say in the show. You say, "I don't tell you what to do in Pittsburgh. You must leave me to manage the rest." And it's kind of, it's so interesting to watch because you feel like she would have been born at a different time. I mean, running places.
How many women, you know,
Yes.
if born at a different time, would have been running places? And what do you do with that energy? Intellectual, the ambition? Well, you put it into your kids, because that's the only place you're allowed to put it. And they, you know, those parallel tracks were very critical at that time. The rules for the 400 were designed to keep out interlopers and to expose you as not being sophisticated enough to be trafficking in that world. And so the women really did have to learn the etiquette so they could participate in a way that was appropriate in order to support their husband's business interests. So the parallel track of the social and the business were critical. And I think that's a big part of what season 3 is about too, is just sort of those two worlds colliding in a way that's uncomfortable, but also necessary, because again, that's the only thing Bertha was allowed to do. And I mean, even when my grandmother was a teacher, and my mother was a nurse, you know, and my other grandmother was a homemaker, those were the things you were allowed to be. And I think my grandmother would have been an amazing scientist, you know, but she wasn't even allowed to wear pants at school. So, I mean, I think
But
it's
the
time that
women
we get
really
to be in
did.
charge.
I think the women really, I mean, the men were busy earning money and making money and creating this capitalistic society, but it was the women who were spending the money and creating the culture of the Gilded Age. And you could say it was completely over the top and indulgent and income inequality, etc., except that they did create cultural institutions that last to this day. And the robber barons, whatever we think of them, they financed cultural institutions, which is not really true today with our tech barons, and our current oligarchs are not interested. They need to be, I think they need to be bullied or shamed into supporting libraries,
The arts.
concert halls, opera houses. Shame on them for not supporting the arts. And
They don't have any shame. That's the problem. We have no lever for it because there's no more shame.
Christine, how did you nail Agnes's withering stare?
oh God, it's so awful to say that. I didn't have to work at it. My mother was a tough old broad, and I swear when I watch myself play Agnes, I just see my mom with her glass of Seagram's 7 Crown, watching, you know, the Sabres hockey team or whatever. She didn't suffer fools. She was tough, and she had a great sense of humor. But she survived the Depression. She walked to school in Buffalo, New York, in the middle of winter with newspapers stuck in her shoes, eating jelly sandwiches for years. She married right after the war, and then my dad died when we were little kids, and she had to be a working mom and worked in an air conditioning factory ordering parts. My mom, you know, was a survivor, and she played the hand she was dealt, and she raised 2 really good kids. And I take it from my mom that, you know, these women were tough, and combine that with a sense of humor and a glass of whiskey, and you have Agnes.
I love you and Cynthia Nixon play off each other so incredibly. I love that you did theater decades ago together, and now you get to go head to head. And as we saw at the end of last season, the situation has changed.
I know. I said it's not good news for Agnes, but it's great news for Christine, because as an actor, you don't want to play the same thing. And if you're playing someone who's utterly convinced that her position is right, and then you get toppled, there's so many places you can go comedically and tragically. To have such a change of fortune is a gift to an actor in the writing. And Cynthia and I were laughing and saying, "Oh my God, we hope for a season 3 so we could show like what will life with Ada be like as the head of the house." She's such a bleeding heart liberal and such a, you know, goody two-shoes. There'll be stray cats and unwed mothers and poets and out-of-work actors, and Agnes will just be in her room, sulking and drinking.
Carrie, I think at the end of last season, I have never felt so invested in who sat where in an opera house, and yet I think we were all like on the edge of our seats about what's gonna happen. Where do you, and then you sort of, I mean, Julian Fellowes kind of, he gives and he takes away in over the course of 10 minutes, it feels like. How do you feel like she ended the season, Bertha ended the season?
Well, she wins. She's triumphant, of course, and just on to the next thing that she will win, which is so fun to play. I mean, that's the other thing that's attractive is that, you know, Bertha and George are driving the narrative so much, they're pushing the boundaries, and that's energetic, and people are drawn to energy. So it's in the writing, you know, that Bertha is sort of strangely the hero of the thing. And I also love that we see her vulnerability with George. It's something she doesn't show just anyone. But what's funny about shooting that stuff is, of course, that set was built inside of our set in Long Island. And so you're stepping out, you know, to observe your triumph, and it's just like your crew in sweatpants and crafty, you know, and like when you're waving to they're not even there, you know, it's all pretend.
It's called acting.
It's called acting. This is not to pat myself on the back. It's just to reveal the magic of, like, then they just like CGI it all in there. But when I'm doing it, it's just like people in, like, chewing, you know, looking up, adjusting something. They don't care. They've been there for 16 hours. They're really over it. And so it really is amazing to me that it comes off because it's just pretend, you know? But it's so fun to do. And
Wait, are you saying that this show is not real?
Well,
what are all these people doing
It's as
here?
real as the Metropolitan Opera. Yeah. Very real. But yeah, it's so absurd sometimes because you think about that moment, you know, and I'm not looking at anything. The rafters, the catwalk, you know, and you're just like, I need a sandwich. It's just, I gotta drum this up. So it's wild that it comes together.
How much did you all want to know from Julian, your character? We get little glimpses. Like, we know that George lost everything and then rebuilt. And we know, you know, we know little bits here and there about the origin stories of these characters. Were there, as actors, are you people who, do you need that whole story in your head before you play a character? Does Julian let you, if so, does Julian let you figure that out, or does he have like a dossier on each character?
I want to hear Christine's answer.
What?
Well, I actually found it very valuable to deep dive into my character's history and with Ada and what the background was and why I married the man that I did and losing the money because of a profligate brother and my father being in the military. My mother was a Livingston of Livingston Manor. So you have someone in the family who was one of the 5 people who wrote the Declaration of Independence. I mean, this goes way back, like in the we got here first school of thinking. And so I found Agnes's backstory invaluable to understanding why she's as tough as she is and why she's holding on so to her sense of her value system, why she's so threatened. So yeah, I did, and I'm usually reminding myself of it with every season. I review my notes and say, okay, this is where she comes from, because that informs so much of her life. Because she's the old guard, you know. You got to understand what she's trying to preserve and why she's threatened. You have to understand what that society was.
I think when she said, at one point when she says that she's old New York, you turn old into like 17 syllables, and it's just wonderful.
Don't ask me to do that now.
I think it's interesting because Christine, I think the history of your character is much more implicated in the present day story of our show, whereas I think Carrie and mine, like, it's rare that something happens in the story that actually requires us to have a history. Like, other than us, you know, like for our sort of, you know, like our use as actors, like there isn't, you know, it's mostly left alone. I mean, we talk about your your sort of Irish potato farmer, back potato digger hands, and but that's about it. I mean, there's some reference to like your lineage is a little bit more working class, but that's all that really comes up. And so, I mean, that's the other thing that happens in a TV show is you're building the ship like on the fly. So I think there are moments you have to kind of go, okay, we're doing this. That means we must have had this kind of history. So we're reverse engineering.
Oh, I just know that in the first season, I think it was the first episode, I had a monologue about when the niece comes and it's like, and this is the way we do it, and then we're taking you to the church and you have to do this, and it was just pure exposition, plain and simple. Julian had to educate the American audience about the world he was pulling them into, because most Americans do not really know much about the Gilded Age. You don't see it much because it's too expensive to produce movies and shows about the Gilded Age, because you'd have to have all the accoutrements. So there was a lot that we had to tell the audience in the first season, which is why I think once season 2 and 3 came on, people were like, oh, okay, we're on board. We understand what the stakes are. We understand who these people are. But there were so many introductions in the first season. Oh, my God.
How much did you all have to educate yourselves? I mean, did you just read every Edith Wharton book, or were there specific things that you read that were able to kind of embed themselves and be, I don't know, just truths for you throughout this?
I'm a literature major, so.
Wow.
So we just talked to Carrie.
I read it a lot, but I have to say, Portrait of a Lady is one of my favorite novels, and I was, I had read all that stuff back in the day, breathlessly, because I had to write essays, and so to revisit it with a little bit more time was such a delight. And I do find that it is helpful to read around the period when we're doing the show, just because of the etiquette and the language. It's quite elevated what we're doing, and. But what was delightful, too, is I hadn't read a lot of the history. I'd read a lot of the literature, but not a lot of the history. And you just discover, and some of it's in the show, right? The Brooklyn Bridge, or, the story of how his wife took over and made the bridge. That stuff is really interesting. There's a great story I stumbled upon about this woman named Audrey Munson. And she was a nude actress in the silent films, and she became a model, a nude model. And she's the model for a lot of the statuary around New York City. And the story of her life, like her landlord fell in love with her and murdered his wife, and she had to escape to Canada. So there's all kinds of wacky stuff going on.
I hope you optioned that.
I know, it's such a great story. I'm too old.
Season
I could
4,
produce it.
season 5.
Yeah, Audrey Munson shows up at the door selling spoons. Because she did. She sold kitchenware door to door. Anyway. She died in an institution. It's so sad. Anyway, it's a fascinating period of time. And then the thing that I most was gratified by was I had not seen black, middle, and upper class communities represented in this period. And I can cry thinking about it because it's gorgeous, and the history of that is so fraught because of the way those neighborhoods were bulldozed to make Central Park, like they were all over the country, to make way, for these philanthropic projects. And the fact that we see these black actors in their joy and in these gowns having a ball, getting paired off with their own history, and yet existing still in a world where Bertha Russell isn't going to look at you or acknowledge that you're there. That's the reality of a Bertha Russell. To me, that's one of the most thrilling parts of the show. And to get to see that world sort of brought to life in this Gilded Age period is just something we haven't really seen before. So that's what I find really satisfying, and I always thrill to those moments in the story. I mean, I can't give you any spoilers for the season, but I squeal sometimes. I squeal when I get to read it.
I also think that it's, one of the comments about our show is that it's like there's a lot of drama but no stakes. And I love I think there's a real subtle wit from cutting from being in the South with Danae's character to then being in our drawing rooms and somebody being like, is the soup too hot? And she's like hiding from a Klansman, you know what I mean? It's like, I think the show has a kind of ironic wit about it because of that I think it would lack otherwise. Yeah.
I want to play some clips of the new season so you all get to see this. And we won't spoil much, but I'm going to ask you some questions. Let's start with some George Russell.
We're going to be really large.
Yeah, we are going to be really large.
Unfortunately, you're an avatar of sexuality.
Okay. So,
Exposition.
yeah.
That's what they pay you the money for.
I love it that there's a mention of Jay Gould, especially considering that he was so much an inspiration for the character.
Yeah, we met him, I think, in the second season. He had a great beard, which kept falling off actually during shooting. But yeah, he was a fascinating character, and he was really a villain of the time. I mean, he was a guy who was constantly sort of scapegoated for the excesses of industrial capital at that point. But yeah, I mean, he was just a creature of the system, I think.
So, as far as what you can say from, I mean, is this George this season? Is it like plowing forward?
Yeah, I mean, George's sort of story of the season is building the Transcontinental Railroad and trying to build that. I mean, we're moving the history a little bit because it was actually a little earlier that this happened. But that story is really fascinating. There's a wonderful book by the historian Richard White called Railroaded about the chaotic and insane way that this was actually done. And really, what it was you had all of these. I mean, this is a very similar story today. You had these capitalists who were figuring out ways to extract capital and land from the state, from the federal government, essentially, in order to line their own pockets. This railroad when it was built, it was not needed. It was built in such a way that the gauges were different from railroad to railroad because you had different companies building them. So you had to actually port entire trains from one railroad to another. I mean, it was truly done. It's like, where is President Xi? I mean, this should have been done by, the Chinese Communist Party. It would have made a lot more sense.
All right, I would like to play.
Sorry.
On that cheery
Morgan
note,
Spector.
Let's be
ladies and
real.
gentlemen.
Okay, let's play the clip with Agnes, and we're going to see a little bit of the fallout of what happened late last season. The temperance movement has come to 61st Street.
not to me.
So tell us how that impacts Agnes.
Well, as I said jokingly, Ada is just so temperamentally different, and her way of dealing with her grief now is to take on what she thinks would have been her husband's causes, one of which was, she thinks, he would have been part of the temperance movement. And there is a line, I don't know if it's in that episode, where I say, Luke drank wine, so did Jesus. Anyway, I think if Ada had wanted to change the draperies, Agnes would have had difficulty. So she's just, whatever Ada's up to is going to rankle Agnes because it's not her idea. And it just speaks to someone who is very fixed in her ways and in the way things have been done for her entire life. And human beings do have a hard time changing, especially late in life, to have suffered such a reversal of fortune. So the unfolding of her consciousness in this other way, ceding power to Ada, is a wonderful thing to play throughout the season. It was a lovely gift.
I was going to ask you if it's a specific kind of fun to play someone who just falls right off that pedestal.
It's always fun. It's always fun. You see it in Shakespeare all the time. It makes for great comedy as well as great tragedy to see someone utterly fixed in his or her mindset behavior, then having to, cope with change, which we all have to cope with change. And if there's an overriding theme in this entire Gilded Age show, I think it is how people are coping with change, each character individually coping with the tremendous change and changes that are happening in society at that time.
I want to come back to that, but first I want to play Carrie's clip of what goes on with Bertha, which is very much about what your story arc will be this season.
Oh, mother.
First of all, I very much like the timing of a John Singer Sargent storyline while there's a new exhibit at the Met. That was well done.
In fact, Kasha, our costume designer, did a presentation ahead of that exhibit.
So what is going on here? What is this mother-daughter situation going to be? And will Bertha ever be satisfied?
No. No, I don't think so. She's pretty single-minded, as we've seen in previous seasons. We know she's determined to marry off Gladys. That's been a theme. And clearly, Gladys is getting ready to enter society properly. And, Bertha, I'll say, without spoiling anything, Bertha usually does get her way, but that doesn't mean there aren't consequences to that. And the thing I think about a lot, people criticize Bertha for her myopia when it comes to marrying her daughter, but, I have a daughter. My daughter is 3. Running my house, by the way. And we are tempted to project things onto our children. And I find I work so hard not to do that with my children. Maybe because of this and his 3 daughters. And yet we don't do it with our siblings or our parents or our family members or our neighbor on the other side of the aisle. And imagine if we could drop our preconceptions about someone and actually reckon with who's directly in front of us, how much clarity we would have, but we don't. And likewise, Bertha believes that she knows what's best for Gladys. And I would argue that she does, in a way. She understands the world is not set up for Gladys, and that if Gladys hopes to have any power or influence, the power and influence Bertha would wish to have, of course, she has to be married in a very particular way, and married well. Because I think what Bertha understands is that you can have puppy love and have a lovely time, but that will not sustain you for 35 years. So what is your life going to be about? What will your purpose be? So I have a lot of respect for what Bertha wants for Gladys, and I do believe it's loving. And does she go about it in a way that seems a little bit blunt? Perhaps. George. But I do believe she understands something about the world, and she wants her daughter to be, not just safe, but fulfilled. Yeah. And also, if there are rights to be gained, she wants her daughter always on the forefront of that, that movement.
Yeah. Christine, I want to just go back to what you were saying about the show being about change, and it's interesting to watch it now with 2025 eyes, because we know where things went. We know who won. We know that New Money emerged victorious, and we've seen it already on the show a little bit. Does that, knowing how things ended up in New York history, does that influence your performances?
Gosh.
You mean knowing we won?
Yeah.
Well, I will speak. I'm deeply troubled by the times in which we are living, and I think late capitalism has been appalling for the planet and for the country, and for income disparity is worse than it's ever been. So I would like to think that my passion is Agnes. Often, how can you be such a stubborn bitch and all that, but she makes some really good points, Agnes, about the world going to hell in a handbag, and that it's like things will really go awry if you only think in terms of material existence and display, and where the deeper value. So I think her heart and her mind and her ethics are very much in the right place, as stubborn as she is. But I think, one of the reasons I'd love this show to continue is because I think there is such an exploration to be done in terms of the corruption that goes on, the buying of government influence, which is happening now, excuse me, and the, grotesque displays of wealth, sending women into a spaceship for what? So they can, do their makeup? What the fuck? Don't get me started. I'm going to sound like Agnes. Drop the mic.
Christine, you're a firework.
I mean, for a show set in the 19th century, it does, I mean, it's a very interesting mirror to hold up to our contemporary situation and culture and what we value, what we choose to value, and what the people we choose to believe in, and
who's getting crushed under it.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't. That's what I really appreciate about our second season is we did see that a little bit. We did see the other side of the sort of capital versus labor struggle, and I actually thought, I mean, I don't know, not to give us too much credit, I thought we pulled that off pretty well. I thought there was that moment where labor wins in the battle against George was like, I was like, oh, I'm moved, yeah. I think I would like to see more of that in our show. I mean, I do think, I mean, Twain's satirical novel that gave the era its name was about corruption in the period. That was precisely what he was mocking, and yeah, I mean, I think you cannot have concentration of wealth at the level that we have it in the hands of so many people and not have democracy corrupted. Capitalism in this form and democracy are actually not compatible. And I think that's the thing we're struggling to reckon with, is that we're watching the destruction of the state, which is really the only entity powerful enough to constrain individuals like George or individuals like our contemporary oligarchs. And yeah, we are going to need a readjustment like the one that followed the Gilded Age, which was a period of enormous, bloody struggle between labor and capital. And ultimately, the New Deal was the kind of peace treaty between those two warring sides. But I don't think there's another way out of it. I mean, if they can, if AI can make it so we don't need labor anymore, maybe that's the final victory. But if, otherwise, there's going to be that struggle, and we're just at the beginning of it, I think.
I wanted to ask you all, we're going to see some new cast members without spoiling. It's been reported. So we're going to get to meet Bertha's sister, played by the great Merritt Wever.
Woo!
She's the best.
She's so good. She's great this season.
J.P. Morgan, played by Bill Camp. Andrea Martin is going to play a medium. I have a feeling who's gonna be going there. Lisa Gay Hamilton will play the extraordinary black suffragist, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. There's Christine, your former Good Wife and Good Fight co-star Dylan Baker will show up. There's going to be a lot of new cast. How do you all welcome people into this theater troupe?
There's a lot of hazing,
Spanking.
light beatings.
You know what? I loved having Merritt. I so admire Merritt, and the fact that we got her was such a coup. And the thing about Merritt Wever is that there's not an untruthful bone in her body. So when she walks onto your set and starts talking, you go, oh, I'm doing it wrong. And I've been doing it wrong this whole time. And I feel like a clown. So that's humbling. But the thing that I loved what Merritt said when she was on the set for a few days, she's terribly self-deprecating, but she said, I realized, she said, the channel is very narrow in the show. Because it is, again, the language is actually quite heightened. And you're wearing a big dress, and you're in a big room, and you have to fill it, but you can't go too far. And she said, if you're this side of it, a little too big, you feel it. And if you're starting to sort of shrink from it, you feel it. And it's just a really narrow channel. And let me say, just like any job, you have good days and bad days. And so, you hope to be in that channel as much as you can. But I just love she was able to articulate that for us. And look, these people, they don't need our help. They've been swanning around in these costumes on the Broadway for decades. We learn a lot when they come on set with us.
We have said to, I'm sure the three of us each have said to new cast members, look, you're going to feel weird for a few days. Like you said, it is like a new reality, and then you get used to it, but don't feel weird about feeling weird, because we all felt that way.
And also, don't grab a glass by the goblet, hold it by the stem, or Julian Fellows will call. He'll make a phone call, and he'll say, and while you're at it, put more flowers in the foyer.
Ooh, tell us about a note that Julian gave you that was that sort of like, you were like, oh, I got to remember that one.
He's not around that much, but I can say that when I was pregnant in season 1, if they knew he was watching, they spent a lot of time trying to tuck my boobs back in. I think they were a little offensive.
I was personally scandalized the entire season.
I could rest my chin on them. That was a real coup for the costume department, but I don't know. I feel like sometimes he's weighing in on etiquette stuff, but
Etiquette and the furniture. Those are the things. Like that's Louis the 14th, not the right.
And dinner, the dinner scenes are like, I feel like a horse doing dressage. It's. And then, God help you, we've all done it, but if you take a bite to eat and then you have a line to try and chew delicately while you, and then the continuity, the teaspoon had to go back at the cup exactly there. It's, the dinner scenes kill me.
yeah, Morgan's left-handed.
Yeah, which you're not allowed to be, so there's that.
He eats a lot of bread.
I do a lot of just like pushing things around.
What is it like? I mean, the production design, the wardrobe. I mean, it's so much fun to watch everything in Newport, in New York. I mean, all of it. When you look in the mirror before you go out to set and you're all done, and your wig and your dress. I mean, your jacket. What is that like? Well, first of all, how much time are you spending like getting into these outfits? And do you sort of lock in that moment when you see yourself?
I mean, yeah. I think for me, there's always a struggle to like buy your own bullshit as an actor, like to have the conviction that you are this person and that you are believable as this person. And when every aspect of how you're presenting in the shot is completely ideal, like it makes it much easier to buy it, you know? And when you buy it, they'll buy it. You'll buy it. I'm sort of paraphrasing Tom Cruise, I think. But yeah.
I have the benefit of, a lot of the characters, I think maybe this is true for you, but a lot of the women have one dressmaker. We have a lot of makers on the show. Artisans we're working with, they're brilliant. But because Bertha is fashion forward, I work with everybody. So my dresses are always like a puzzle. You have to take a video of how to put it on or figure it out. But honestly, the people we're working with are so good at their jobs. Amber, who was my dresser this year, we can get in and out in 10 minutes. It's like, do I have a 20-minute break? I'm gonna go eat a sandwich, let's take this off. And then Amber comes in, we know how much time we need to put it back on. But it is, of course it remakes your body. And it's funny, because we started during COVID, our crew never saw me without my wig on and a hat and a dress. They do not recognize me on the street. They do not recognize me at a cast party. I had a whole conversation with one of our camera crew members who thought I was Justin Theroux's date. And he was, bless his heart, he will remain nameless. He was talking to me about me. And then he suddenly
Was he
goes,
saying nice things?
Who?
yes. And I said, I'm not going to say. He's like, I said, at least you said nice things, honey. And he was just like, this is the worst day of my life. Oh my God, what have I done? I was like, no, it's fine. But that's how different, we can look. But honestly, like the makeup, we don't wear much makeup, so that's pretty fast. It's just getting into the wigs and, but the costumes are sort of like day by day. Some of them look heavy and they're not, and some of them really are heavy and hot and horrible.
Christine, it does feel like Agnes has, her dresses look heavy.
They are. I feel like I'm wearing a set of curtains. I feel it's like a metaphor, like dragging all that velvet and brocade. It's like I carry the old money storyline. Get out of my way.
Are we going to see more scenes with the two of you together?
We had one. You visited.
Are you allowed to say?
Oh no, that's
okay. We can say that.
But I so long I so long to work with these great actors.
Yeah, same.
And I just hang out on the set with them and bullshit all day with them.
I just call Christine for advice because I don't see her at work.
I know, but yeah, I hope.
We thought more would be made of it.
Yeah, I
We
thought
thought
when
more
we
would be made of
finally did.
Are you guys reviewing the show right now?
No, we had high expectations
Carrie Coon
for a
for
particular
Collider.
moment.
Well, but there's a future. I mean, it's something to look forward to, which is why I do think there should be future seasons, because wouldn't it be delightful to see these two ladies in a dilemma having to solve something and have to get together? Or maybe I could give you some advice.
Maybe.
Or you could just, I don't know.
I think I'm figuring things out just fine, but thank you. But Carrie Coon will always take advice from Christine Baranski.
Before we go, I wanted to ask each of you if you had a favorite moment that your character has done, a line of dialogue. I don't know if you're like, once you film, if you're like, your dialogue goes right out of your mind. But if there was a particular moment that really just stood out for you that was just so friggin' delicious to play.
Well, I have a fight scene coming up that is just kidding.
I have that scene in the first season where I go and buy out everything in the bazaar, and that was really like, I feel like that
So
was
sexy.
You were the man.
the man, and that was George's entrance to the series, kind of to be like, here's the kind of character I am, where it's just like,
I'm just going to buy everything in the store.
Yeah. It's like that, everybody else shows up on the battlefield with like little toy cars, and he just like rolls up with a tank and is like, I don't know, it's fun. Yeah.
My favorite, now that you ask, is when I crossed the street because my butler had crossed over. And I remember we had the camera, there was a wide shot camera all the way, and a horse almost ran over me, but my trajectory was so direct, and it was just like me and then the horse. And then I entered and I saw everybody sitting there. And I remember your face and how it stunned everybody was. And, I had egg all over my face as a character. She was so humiliated. But then I turn and I say to my butler, heads have rolled for less. That's Julian, fellows. That's not me. That's Julian.
I guess I'd have to say I always enjoy when things are physicalized, just in my acting life. And so the day I had to throw the breakfast tray, let me just brag a little bit. I nailed it. I nailed it on the first take. I landed it right in front of the camera, and the cameraman was very proud of me. And those are the days when I feel
You didn't
most
know
proud.
who you were later, but
Yeah, no, he had no idea who I was at lunch, but he only knows me as Bertha Russell. But I also feel like I never feel more Bertha than when I'm walking down my stairs. And you have to just not, you can't look down because
You
there are
do
your
that
stairs.
so
Thank you, I really
well.
practiced. We call it Cherry Jonesing the stairs. I should call it Baranskiing the stairs, though.
Why Cherry Jones?
I don't know. I heard a rumor once that she goes on the set of a play and she like just works the set until it feels like her own home. I don't know if that's a rumor, though. I just might be spreading rumors, but.
a nice
I loved
rumor.
it. I love walking down that red opera dress, which was later. I wore that the first 2 weeks of season 1, and then that dress came back at the end of season 1, and I was 8 months pregnant and ate a rack of ribs that day. And I remember Sally Richardson Whitfield took one look at me. She goes, "Oh no, I'm gonna have to shoot across your face." Because I was so big. And they reverse engineered that dress so I could actually put it on. And I just looked back at those photos down the stairs. I was like, well, we've come a long way.
Well, I absolutely love this show. June 22nd, 9 p.m. on HBO and Max
Thank you all.
for season 3. I hope there are many more seasons to come. I want to thank Morgan Spector, Christine Baranski, and Carrie Coon so
Thank you,
much.
Jessica.
Thank you all. And thank you to ATX.
Watch it when it's on so we get picked up, okay?